Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we have our last playoff preview to do before the actual playoff preview happens next month. Yes, we are less than a month away from the start of the NHL playoffs, and I want to do another playoff preview with the matchups as they are as of right now. Once again, stay tuned to the end to see my Stanley Cup final matchup and who I have advancing to the second and third rounds coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, do not forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. I would never be able to with all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. I'm trying to hit 650. In the next couple of weeks, we're only about 9 subscribers away from that. So if you can, hit the subscribe button down below. It really does help with the channel. And on top of that, don't forget to stay tuned for more videos coming on in the very near future. If you haven't already, check out my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. Just another way you guys can help out the channel. So if you can, within your means, make a donation. It really does help. And on top of that, if you guys haven't already, check out my live stream I did a couple weeks ago talking about all the trades that happened on trade deadline day. So very interesting note there. But in today's video, we've got a playoff predictions video. So I'm going to first break down the standings. I'll give you guys the points percentage playoff matchups, which are very, very interesting. And then I'm going to give you my thoughts on each matchup and who I would have winning all the way up to the Stanley Cup final. And once again, this is just my pure opinion. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion down in the comment section below if you guys want to give it. So basically, first we're going to go over the standings here. We're going to do the point standings here. There's not very much changes in the points and points percentage standings, but I'll redo the standings points percentage wise after we go over points wise. So first, in the Western Conference, the Colorado Avalanche lead the Western Conference in the Central Division with 98 points. They're followed by 96-point Dallas and 90-point Minnesota. Those are our top 3 teams in the Central. The top 3 teams in the Pacific are 78-point Anaheim, 77-point Edmonton, and 76-point Vegas. Those are our top 3 teams in the Pacific. The 2 wildcard teams are the 76-point Utah Mammoth and the 71-point Seattle Kraken, and the 4 closest teams to a playoff spot are the 71-point Los Angeles Kings, the 70-point San Jose Sharks, the 69-point Nashville Predators, and the 67-point Winnipeg Jets. So those are our 4 teams who are closest to a playoff spot. We're currently on the outside looking in, but there are a couple of changes when you do it points percentage wise. Only 2 in the Western Conference. The 2 changes are the Knights have a better point percentage than the Oilers, so they'll leapfrog them, and in a first round series the Knights will actually host the Oilers instead of vice versa. And in the second wildcard position, there would also be a change points percentage wise and points wise, because points percentage wise the Sharks actually have a better points percentage than the Kraken. So if you do a points percentage wise, the Sharks would go to the Avalanche in a playoff series and the Kraken would miss the playoffs. So those are the only 2 changes points percentage wise in the West. In the Eastern Conference now, you have the Buffalo Sabres at 90 points. They are first spot in the Atlantic Division. The 86-point Tampa Bay Lightning are second, and the Montreal Canadiens at 84 points are third. The top 3 teams in the Metro Division are 92-point Carolina, who would lead the Eastern Conference, followed by 84-point Pittsburgh and 83-point NYI. Then you have 82-point Boston and 82-point Detroit, the 2 wildcard teams, and they'd be followed by 81-point Columbus, 77-point Ottawa, 76-point Philadelphia, 76-point Washington. Those are our 4 closest teams to a playoff spot who are on the outside looking in. Now there is one change that would happen in the Eastern Conference in the points percentage standings, and that is the Jackets actually have a better points percentage than both the Bruins and the Red Wings. So if you go by points percentage, the Jackets are actually in the first wildcard position, the Bruins are in the second wildcard position, and the Red Wings would actually miss the playoffs. That's the only change. So with all that in mind, the standings, the way the points percentage wise would change things up. Here would be the playoff matchups points percentage wise in the NHL. So with the Western Conference, you'd have the Avalanche take on the Sharks, and you'd have the Stars take on the Wild, and then in the Pacific Division, you'd have Anaheim versus Utah and Vegas versus Edmonton. In the Eastern Conference, you'd have Buffalo take on Columbus, and you'd have Tampa take on Montreal. And the Metro side, you'd have Carolina versus Boston, and you'd have Pittsburgh versus the Islanders. Some very interesting first round matchups. I'm going to start off here in the Eastern Conference because I think a lot of my picks in the Eastern Conference right now are less controversial than my Western Conference picks. So we'll start in the Metro Division. Carolina versus Boston. Listen, Boston's on a really good run. I'm still sort of hoping that they fall off so Ottawa can make the playoffs. But still, Boston's had a surprisingly good season. They have some really good players. Swayman's been keeping them in a lot of games this year. Do I think they could go toe-to-toe with Carolina? Not exactly. Offensively, I do think Carolina has the way deeper forward group. Defensively, both stack up pretty well against each other, but Carolina does have a lot better depth. And in net, I do think that the Bruins have the better goaltender in Jeremy Swayman, but Brendan Boosie, who isn't really playoff tested, has been lights out in the regular season. So if Boosie can carry that success into the playoffs, Carolina could easily handle the Boston Bruins. I could see Swayman steal the Boston Bruins a game or two. I do think that, but I just don't think that Bruins team has enough talent to go toe-to-toe with the Carolina Hurricanes. So I'll probably say Carolina in 5, maybe 6. I'm sticking with 5 though right now. I think it'll probably be a shorter series. I think the Kings will be able to take the Bruins down in that one. Then you have the Penguins versus the Islanders. This is a very interesting game. I think this one could go either way. Like offensively, I think both teams have very, very deep forward groups. Like if you look at their spare forwards on regular nights, I do think both have extremely deep forward groups. Defensively though, I would give the edge to the New York Islanders, just given the fact that Schaefer's really revitalized that defense, and that top 6 on the blue line, it looks scary. And in that, I do think Sorokin's a better goaltender than Stuart Skinner. I know Skinner just went to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, but I do think Sorokin is a better goaltender. So because of the advantages on the blue line and in net, I would lean more towards this being an Islander series. Wouldn't be shocked if Pittsburgh was able to take this one and advance to round 2. Like I said, I could see this sort of a series go either way. But I just think with Sorokin in net, he's going to steal them a game or two. He's going to be able to get them the victory. I'm going to say Islanders in 7. I think it would go to 7, but I'm going to say that the Islanders win this series. So it would mean that we'd have a second round matchup of Islanders versus Carolina Hurricanes, which is a very interesting second round matchup. Now you go over to the Atlantic side. You got Buffalo, Columbus. This would be an incredible first round series. You know me, I like teams who've never won a Stanley Cup advancing far. I like to see new teams win their first ever Stanley Cup. I like to see teams who've not had much success over the past couple of years wind up having success in the playoffs. You got the Jackets who've not made the playoffs since 2019 facing the Sabres who've not made the playoffs in over 15 years. And both are arguably two of the hottest teams, or maybe the 2 hottest teams in the Eastern Conference. So this, in my opinion, would be a very fantastic series to watch. Offensively, both teams have really good offenses. I think the Sabres, with their veterans, have a little bit of edge on the offensive side, but the Jackets have a very deep forward group as well. Defensively, I do think that the Sabres had the advantage. Jackets have a pretty decent blue line too, but after those Stanley and Shen additions, so long as they don't play together, the Sabres defense just is incredible. And in net, both teams have inconsistent to some extent goaltenders. I'm not sure if Lyon or Ukko-Pekka-Luukkonen would be a starter. I'm not sure if Merzlikins or Greaves would be a starter, but they're actually pretty similar in net. So I do think the advantages would go to Buffalo, which is why I would take them in 6 games in the first round series. I just think that Columbus just making the playoffs for the Columbus Blue Jackets would be great, but they would run into a wall as the Buffalo Sabres. So I would take Sabres in 6 games to have them advance to round 2. And then you'd have the Bolts versus the Habs. Now, I don't like teams consistently making the playoffs, consistently having success. The Bolts are one of those teams, but I gotta look at this from an objective point of view. Tampa does have the better forward group in my opinion. Montreal is a very good, young, exciting forward group, but I think top to bottom, Tampa has a slight bit better forward group. Defensively, I would say that the Habs have a better blue line. I know Rash has been really good, and I know Moser's been really good, but I still think that defense with guys like Hudson and Matheson and Gooley would be an advantage for the Habs. In net, though, the Habs have had very inconsistent goaltending with Montembeault and Dobesh and Fowler, and Vasilevsky's sort of revitalized himself. I think that in and of itself will hand the Bolts this series, yes. I know that I want the Habs to win. I'm hoping the Habs win if this was a first round series, but I would actually pick the Bolts in probably 6 games. There's a couple of different factors, but I mean, just based on the fact that the Bolts have Vasilevsky and the Habs have very inconsistent goaltending and don't really have a clear-cut starter for the playoffs, I'd probably lean towards Tampa winning. So my second round matchups in the Eastern Conference would be Canes, Islanders, and Bolts, Sabres. So very interesting note there. Next, going over to the Western Conference. So we'll start in the Pacific Division first. We've got the Utah Mammoth taking on the Anaheim Ducks. Once again, just like with the Buffalo Sabres and Columbus Blue Jackets series, this is a series I love. Ducks not made the playoffs since 2017, and Mammoth will be the first time in their franchise's history they made the playoffs. So this would be a fantastic series I would love to see. I do think that both teams made really solid additions on the defensive side at the deadline with Carlson and Weegar. So I do think the Ducks have a slight edge on defense, but only slight. And both goaltenders have been fantastic. Dostal's really run with the starting role this year, and Vejmelka's one of the best goaltenders in the entire NHL. Just given those stats, I will give the edge to Utah in net, but Dostal is no slouch in net. So all in all, I do think this would be a very tight series, a very long series, but I am going to take the Utah Mammoth in 6 games. I do think even as the road team, this team has what it takes to take down a team like the Anaheim Ducks, and I think as long as they keep that first wildcard spot and they go hop over to the Pacific Division, there's a good chance they're going to be able to do some damage in this year's playoffs. So honestly, I do think that even though the Anaheim Ducks have had a pretty dang good season, I'm taking Utah in 6 to take them down. So that's what I think will win the first Pacific Division matchup. The second one, you got the Knights versus the Oilers. Another Knights-Oilers series. 3 years ago was the Knights and they went to the Cup. Last year was the Oilers and they went to the Cup. This year they meet in the first round instead of the second round. So this will be a very interesting series. Knights would host in the points percentage standings, which is what I'm doing here. So that might be an advantage. Offensively, I do think the Oilers have the better offense. Not sure about Draisaitl's status for especially those first few games of the playoffs, but even without Draisaitl, after some of their additions, I just think that the Oilers are a little bit deeper on the forward group. Defensively, I think both teams stack up pretty well against each other. I might give the slight, very slight edge to Vegas, but Edmonton does have a pretty decent defensive core as well. And in net, whether it's Ingram or Jari, I think Hill is an upgrade on either one of those guys. I think they're going to probably run with Ingram to start the playoffs. So I think between Ingram and Hill, I think Hill, given the fact he is a Stanley Cup winning goaltender, I'll probably give the edge to the Vegas Golden Knights. So you'd have Vegas versus Edmonton. And in that series, I could see this one go either way. I'm a Knights fan. I don't want to see the Oilers move on, but something just tells me they're going to sneak by ever so slightly. I'm going to say Oilers in 7 right now. I know that's a little bit surprising coming from a Knights fan. It just really does depend on what Oilers defense shows up and what Knights forward group shows up. Because when the Knights are running with their forward group clicking, they can beat any team. And when the Oilers actually have competent goaltending and really solid defense, they can beat any team. But if the Oilers don't have really good goaltending or the Knights don't have a really good forward group, then they can't win against those other teams. So I definitely do think it'll be Oilers slightly, maybe in like overtime in game 7, but I think this is going to be a very tight series and I could easily see Vegas win it. Next, going over to the Central Division. Now this is where I think the most controversy will happen, but I'll let you guys know my thought process for these ones. So you got the Avalanche versus the Sharks. Offensively, I do think that the Avalanche have the stronger forward group, but the Sharks are not very far behind. I think people underrate just how good that San Jose Sharks forward group is, but I do think the Avalanche would have the edge on the forward group. Defensively, by far, Avalanche had the edge. Makar, Taves, that defense top to bottom, it's stacked, and the Sharks definitely have a really weak defensive core. So it's the Avalanche have the edge defensively. In net, I think it's really close too. It really does depend on if Askarov or Nedeljkovic start. If it's Nedeljkovic, then the Avs once again have a way better goaltending. But if it's Askarov, I do think it's really similar. I might even give the edge in the net to the San Jose Sharks. So it really does depend on which goaltender starts and if Askarov's good to go for the playoffs. But in my opinion, this is sort of giving me Tampa Columbus 2019 vibes. I know that the Avalanche are probably not going to hit the 120-point mark anymore, but they're still on track to win the President's Trophy, which I think they probably will, and we know about the President's Trophy curse. Now, I could easily see the Avalanche take down the San Jose Sharks. If the Kraken or the Kings or the Predators or even the Oilers made it as the second wildcard team, I would probably give the edge to the Colorado Avalanche. But something's just telling me, given how good this team's been, how good Celebrini's been, I have a feeling that he might just will his team to a victory over the Colorado Avalanche. I'm going to say San Jose in 7. I think this is one of the upsets that I'm going to have for the playoffs in the first round if this was the playoff mark. So I'm going to say San Jose in 7. Once again, President's Trophy curse and everything. I do think that the Avalanche could easily win this one, but something's just telling me Celebrini's just not going to let the San Jose Sharks go down in round 1. So that will lead the San Jose Sharks to advance, and then you have the Stars versus the Wild. I've seen a lot of people all over social media saying that the Stars and Avalanche are going to have one heck of a battle when it comes to the second round. People are keeping on forgetting about the Minnesota Wild. I know they have not looked good over the past little while, and the Stars are on a 15-game point streak. I know, I get that. I have a feeling this is a similar situation to Los Angeles, Edmonton, and Tampa, Florida from last year, and I'm not making the same mistake again. I saw Tampa and Los Angeles have great runs towards the end of the regular season to nab those second spots in those divisions, while Florida and Edmonton slow-paced the finish line, and they did not look overly good. And I picked Tampa and Los Angeles last year in my playoff prediction video, and both of them lost. Florida 1-5, Edmonton 1-6. I'm not making that same mistake again. I have a feeling Minnesota is doing this strategically, not playing to 100%, just to try and sort of coast to the end of the season. They're going to hit around 100 points, and then they're going to go full throttle in the playoffs, and they're going to surprise a whole bunch of teams. I'm taking Wild in 6. It's what I've been predicting every single playoff prediction video for the last couple of videos, and I'm going to stick with it. So you have Wild Sharks and Oilers Mammoth in the Western Conference second round. So now that I've taken a lot of time to explain my first round, I'll just sort of quickly get through the second and third and fourth rounds here. So you got Carolina, NYI. Carolina has the better offense, in my opinion. Carolina has a slight bit better defense. Islanders do have the better goaltender in Sorokin, but Boosie's no slouch either. So this is a very interesting series. We've seen this matchup a couple of times. I think 2 years ago and 3 years ago in round 1. Canes always seem to have the Islanders number, even with Sorokin in net. The Canes have been owning the New York Islanders recently. So I'm going to say that happens again. I'm going to say Canes win to advance to the Eastern Conference Final for, like, was it the third time in 4 years or something like that. So I do think that the Canes will wind up taking on the Islanders. I hope that the Islanders put up a good fight, and I think Sorokin could steal a game or two. But just given recent history, Canes just own the New York Islanders at this point. You have Buffalo versus Tampa. This is a series I think a lot of people will be looking forward to. The Buffalo Sabres, new team. The Tampa Bay Lightning trying to regain some of their mojo from the early 2020s. I do think offensively, the Buffalo Sabres have the slight bit better forward group, just depth-wise. The Bulls may have the better top 2 players, but depth-wise, forward group-wise, Buffalo has a deeper team. Defensively, I think these stack up pretty well against each other, but I would give the edge on the defensive end to Buffalo. And net, once again, Vasilevsky, solid goaltender. I think he'll be able to steal in a game or two, and I would give the edge in net to Tampa. But I do think with their entire team and how it's constructed right now, I would say Buffalo wins this series in probably 6 or 7 games, maybe 7. Buffalo, I think, will be able to sneak by Tampa and reach the Eastern Conference Final before the Austin Matthews-led Maple Leafs team was able to do. That would be crazy in my opinion. But with the way the playoff picture would sit at this point in time, I could see it. So we'd have Buffalo versus Carolina in the ECF. In the Western Conference, you'd have Utah versus Edmonton. At this point, I think it would take Edmonton everything they have to get past the Vegas Golden Knights. Offensively, I do think the Oilers have the better top-end talent. Depth-wise, I do think Utah's the better team forward group-wise. Once again, top-end talent does go to the Edmonton Oilers. Defensively, Utah has the better defense. I don't think it's a little bit close. I know the Oilers have Bouchard, and I know the Oilers have a guy like Jake Wallman and Matthias Ekholm, but I think after the Uyghur addition, Utah would have the better defense. And in that, if it's Ingram against Vejmelka, two former tandem goaltenders in Utah, I would give Vejmelka the edge. So I do think that Utah would actually have the edge here, even though they're on the road, and I would take the Utah Mammoth in 5, maybe 6 games. I don't think it'll be a long series, and I do think Utah will be able to take down the Oilers to advance to their first ever Western Conference Final. And then you have the Wild versus the Sharks. If the Sharks are able to get past the Avalanche, I think it would take whatever they had out of their tank. Offensively, Wild have the better team. Defensively, Wild have the better team. And in net, Gustafsson and Askarov will be pretty decent for both sides, but I would give the slight edge to San Jose's Askarov. If it's Nedeljkovic, I don't even think the San Jose Sharks make the second round. But definitely, I do think that if the Sharks versus Wild, it'd be Wild in 4 games. I once again think, it says in the preseason, the Wild are destined to go far this year. So I would say these probably sweep the San Jose Sharks. And even if the Avalanche did beat the Sharks and advance to the second round against the Wild, I would say the Wild probably beat the Avalanche in 6, like I've been saying over the past little while. I just think that San Jose, if Askarov's healthy, will be able to upset the Avalanche. But definitely, I would definitely say the Wild in very, very short series would be able to take out the San Jose Sharks. So you'd have a Western Conference Final of Wild Mammoth and an Eastern Conference Final of Sabres Hurricanes. This will be very, very interesting. In the Eastern side, offensively, I'd actually give the edge to the Buffalo Sabres. Defensively, the edge goes to Carolina Hurricanes, and in net, if Boosie's playing really well and he leads into the Eastern Conference Final, probably Carolina. But if it's like a Lyon or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen who've been looking great in the playoffs, maybe it's Buffalo. Like, the goaltending matchup, I think, would be really, really even. So I would say this would be a very interesting series. But once again, we know Carolina's history in Eastern Conference Finals, as they've usually not done very good. I think they'll do a little bit better this year and push it to 6 or 7 games. But I do think with the way they've been playing recently, the Buffalo Sabres are going to beat the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm going to say Buffalo in 7. I'm going to say that it takes like an overtime win or something like that, and they'll reach the Stanley Cup Final for the first time since I think 1999. So that's the Eastern side with Buffalo winning it. And the Western side, like I did in my last playoff prediction video, we have Utah versus Minnesota. A very interesting matchup here. Offensively, Minnesota has the edge. Defensively, Minnesota has the edge. And net, Utah has the edge with Milka. I think these two teams stack up pretty well against each other. However, I would say that the Minnesota Wild, once again, in 6 games, take down the Utah Mammoth. As I've been saying over the past couple of playoff prediction videos, no one's going to stop Minnesota, and they've been my Stanley Cup favorite since the start of the season. So I have the Wild going to the Stanley Cup Final to face the Buffalo Sabres, the first ever Stanley Cup Final in Minnesota Wild franchise history. This would be a very entertaining Stanley Cup Final, in my opinion. You got Buffalo versus Minnesota, 2 teams who've never really had very much success and have never won a Stanley Cup, which would guarantee a new team will win the Stanley Cup, which personally I would love. So very interesting note there. When you stack these 2 teams up against each other, I think the Wild have the better forward group. Wild definitely had the better defense. And in net, I would probably give the Wild a little bit of edge with Gustafsson. So all in all, I do think the Wild will be able to take down the Buffalo Sabres. And once again, I have the Wild winning the Stanley Cup. I think it'd probably be like 6 games. I think the Buffalo Sabres will be able to win a couple, but I think their streak of getting to the Cup Final but not winning a Stanley Cup is going to extend to, I think, 3 times now. So once again, I do have Buffalo and Minnesota in the Stanley Cup Final, but the Minnesota Wild win their first ever Stanley Cup in their first ever Stanley Cup Final appearance and win it in 6 games. So very interesting note there. But that is all I'm going to talk about in this video. I love to hear your guys' thoughts. Love to hear your opinions. Let me know what you think I got wrong, what you think I got right. I know a lot of people will probably be in the comments saying that the Avalanche Stars should be a second round series and not Wild Sharks. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of those picks that you think I got wrong down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Once again, if you haven't already, leave a subscribe down below, leave a comment. We're trying to hit 650 subscribers in the very near future, so if you can, leave a subscribe. It really does help with the channel. And also, if we're going to stay tuned for videos coming in the very near future. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. The link to that down in the description below. Can't see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.